Hello and welcome to Pearl Magazine. Chinese ceramics are so famous around the world that porcelain from this part of the world is simply known as China. But in different forms, shapes, and colors, there are actually different ancient methods in the art of ceramic making. Pearl Magazine's Tina Jiang visits Hong Kong's last dragon kiln and talks to the owner, scholars, and ceramists to learn more about the city's production history.
My name is Louis Low. I'm a ceramic artist and a sculptor.
Louis Low's art journey started with clay some 50 years ago. The first thing he learned was to make Siwan-style porcelain figures. Originally from Siwan in Guangdong province, the sculpture is uniquely styled with unglazed skin but heavily glazed clothes.
The glaze they use is specially formulated to be fired in the Siwan-style dragon kiln.
Dragon kiln is a traditional form of wood-firing oven to fire ceramics. It was popular in the southern part of China, especially in Siwan. It's typically narrow, long, and built on a slightly steep slope. In the 1970s, Louis was still a teenager. His teacher brought him to a local dragon kiln in Tuen Mun. It was his first time to see one, and it was the start of his relationship with ceramics.
The kiln was so large and more than I expect. I never see, wow, that's a kiln 100 feet long.
Built in the 1940s, this is the only dragon kiln in Hong Kong. To this day, it is still complete and intact.
When you are young, you see people find a kiln. We don't know other people and other family. We think that everybody have the kiln at home, but actually it's wrong.
Located near a hidden lane in Castle Peak Road, the place is also home to ceramist Lung Pak Chun. It was once owned by his father, Lung Sum, a potter from Siwan. Pak Chun took over the kiln after his father passed away in the 1980s.
My father was born in 1919. He started work as a potter when he was 8. He's a very skilled worker. By the time he was about 20, it was Second World War. He went to Hong Kong to look for a fortune as a pottery worker.
According to various studies, it was around this time in the 1940s that the kiln was built by a businessman who wanted to produce fine porcelain for the export market. It wasn't a success, so the owner abandoned it. Lung Sum was working as a foreman there. He organized other workers and took over the business.
Life in the 1950s and 1960s was difficult. You may wonder why there were so many Siwan ceramics here in the 50s and 60s. Political factors caused many potters to flee to Hong Kong. After the kiln was refitted, they used it as a tool to fire Siwan pottery and make a living.
Sharon Wong is an archaeologist. She has been doing research on ceramic archaeology for 10 years.
I was studying for my PhD at the National University of Singapore, and because of my research thesis, I went to a local dragon kiln to investigate and interview its owner. The owner was very curious about whether there are dragon kilns in Hong Kong too. At that time, I didn't have an answer, but this also created an opportunity. When I returned to work in Hong Kong, I asked around my pottery friends. They mentioned that there is one dragon kiln here.
Sharon still remembers the first time she visited the kiln.
The first time I set foot in this dragon kiln was around 2015. I was shocked, excited, and felt amazing. It was like time stopped in a certain time and space in the 1980s. You can see that there is a lot of pottery or kiln furniture behind me, but they have been completely preserved. So as a researcher of ceramic archaeology, I feel very thrilled. I am so happy that there is such a well-preserved dragon kiln in Hong Kong.
In the 1950s and 60s, during its heyday, the kiln produced many household items for the local market in Hong Kong.
They produced many categories of ceramics. According to their introduction, there were almost 100 different types of Shiwan pottery.
From flower pots and cooking wares to roof tiles and water pipes, the kiln was busy firing. For cost efficiency, they would only fire the kiln once a month, which allows over 3,000 pots to be produced at a time.
The kiln produces a lot of the lid, the cover of the cooking pots. When the pot has cracks, in the old days, people used to bring the pot to the market, and then there would be some craftsmen there to help you fix it. They use the wire to tighten the pot. The pot can be fixed, but the lid, when it's broken, is broken.
Carmen Tong and some ceramic enthusiasts formed a concern group a few years ago, hoping to raise awareness about this heritage kiln.
We appreciate this kiln in particular because it used to produce all kinds of everyday, ordinary artifacts. So from the piggy bank to the cooking pots, lid, and flower pots, they allow us to have a glimpse of how people actually live the everyday life. The kiln and the artifacts, they actually help us to connect with Hong Kong people's past history. I mean, in that period in particular, roughly 40s to late 70s.
Apart from producing functional wares for everyday use, the kiln also attracted local artists to come and fire their own art pieces. Louis Lowe is one of them. Today, he's visiting the kiln again.
To me, the kiln is very special because my first 10 years of ceramic career totally relate to the kiln.
He believes that this wood-firing kiln produces the best quality glaze.
Of course, we may find in, say, electric kiln, but you will never have the same result in terms of the coloring, in terms of the way it looks. You can tell the difference when you look at a sculpture fired in the electric kiln with one fired in the wood-fired kiln.
Back in
the 70s, transportation was not as convenient as today, but Louis still came here regularly.
At the time, I lived in Causeway Bay. There's no MTR, no railway to go there. I would take a bus to the Wan Chai ferry pier. I took the ferry to Jordan, where there's a van take people direct to new territories. They drive very fast. So I have to hold my work consistently up the air instead of put it on the floor for 1.5 hours at least to reach Castle Peak.
Okay, now this is the area where I fire my works. Mr. Leung normally will leave a space here.
Mr. Leung is a very serious person. He never smiled. When I met him, he just, you're coming to fire your items? Put your items over here. That's it. And he just gone.
That said, Louis recalls that they would occasionally talk about the artwork he would make. Eventually, Louis was allowed to set up his works inside the kiln by himself.
It's a quite encouraging move to me at that time.
Hong Kong local pottery artists, many of them have been stationed here to fire their own pottery works. This can be said to be the cradle of Hong Kong pottery crafts. On the other hand, it can also show that after the Shiwan tradition came to Hong Kong, it was localized and carried forward. I'll call it a living fossil.
But in the 1980s, facing competition from the mainland and new restrictions on air pollution, the firing had to stop.
Since the opening up of China, Shiwan, the city itself, has produced a lot of cheap products. In the 80s, the Hong Kong government was worried that it would produce smoke and pollution, so the kiln stopped working.
Since then, the story of the dragon kiln was gradually forgotten by the city and its people.
This kind of traditional kiln, not just because whenever we meet other people, we try to ask them, do you know there's a pottery kiln in Hong Kong? Basically, everybody said no. This kind of like old structure, small industry, they were all eradicated because of the fast-paced development in Hong Kong in the past few decades. Knowing that most Hong Kong people don't know about the existence and the value of this place, so we do a lot of education program.
Today, a group of university students is visiting the kiln. Suzanne Trumpf is their teacher.
We brought our students here today. We are coming here for the second time, and we are very interested in the kiln because in our division of landscape architecture, we're looking into soils and soil-based materials and look how they are produced locally and historically. And the kiln is one of the last remaining production workshops, so to say, of Hong Kong's traditional stoneware.
She believes that it's very important for the students to learn from the site.
It's a pity that probably the kiln can't be fired anymore, but despite of that, I think it's a great object or a great trace of the craftsmanship and of the traditions in Hong Kong. Which is very worthwhile to look into. It would be great to see the community, the local community, more engaged into these places.
When we come back, balancing heritage conservation and urban development. Stay with us. Welcome back to Pearl Magazine. At the Castle Peak Dragon Kiln, ceramic fire has stopped since the 1980s, but its archaeological value has been officially confirmed. A government official proposed an idea to preserve the kiln. However, full protection has never happened, even until now. Pearl Magazine's Tina Zhang meets different stakeholders to learn how to find a balance between heritage conservation and urban development. Born and raised next to a dragon kiln, everything about ceramics became second nature to Leung Pak Chun.
The workers are making a lot of pots and they need glazing. And we got a lot of pots coming up along and we are glazing all the time.
He had to help with the glazing, firing, and other chores since he was a primary school student. Back then, it was rather a burden for him.
I'm not very happy with that because when I returned from school, we got a lot of work to do. I always tell my father, I'm doing my homework and don't call me. Actually, I just want to work from the very beginning.
But being born into a poor family, he had no other options.
My father made a lot of pots, but made a little money. When your family is poor, you have to do it.
Hoping to get away from the kiln, Pak Chun studied really hard and got into university.
I study accounting, but I may go to working in accounting firms. But I don't like the stress of the accounting, therefore I go back to here.
He has since stayed and taken care of the kiln until the 1980s.
But in the 1982, the government bought the land for housing process. Therefore, the land became a government land. And then the business come to a standstill, and then all the workers dismissed. We are planning to remove and go away.
But then, Dr. Solomon Bard, the first executive secretary of the Antiquities and Monuments Office, approached and told the Leungs that he was interested in preserving the kiln by setting up a working museum here. And Leung Pak Chun was intrigued.
He told me that a living monument is always better than a dead one. And then a working museum is always better than one. It doesn't work.
Dr. Bard's idea of a working museum was to introduce ceramic masters from China and overseas to work at the kiln together so that local ceramists can learn from them. He even arranged for Leung Pak-chun to attend meetings with the government to discuss the initiative.
In the government, there are a lot of rules and regulations they have to overcome, a lot of smoke coming out when you fire the wood. And the government will not allow such amount of smoke coming out. When they try to remove smoke by the modern equipment, Antiquity and Monument Department say that you cannot introduce too many modern equipment to the old kiln.
In the beginning, the government also helped design some sketches for the plan. But after Mr. Bard retired, the proposal was left pretty much ignored.
There's a lot of difficulties facing this exciting project. Therefore, finally, the project become delayed for 40 years up to now.
According to a written reply by the government to Pearl magazine earlier this month, the Antiquities and Monuments Office confirmed that the kiln is of archaeological value for understanding the local pottery production in the mid-20th century. However, back in September 2014, the Antiquities Advisory Board, after assessing the heritage value of the kiln, awarded it a Grade 3 status, the lowest rank in the system.
It may be because the submitted research materials are not enough, so the rating is low. Also, I think it has something to do with its location. Tuen Mun is relatively remote, unlike the central and western district or Tsim Sha Tsui and Yang Ma Tei areas, which are centers of the urban area. Transportation here is not that convenient, and therefore it has received less attention.
Archaeologist Sharon Wong used to be a member of the Antiquities Advisory Board. She believes that the kiln is underrated.
The Dragon Kiln is not an ordinary historical building structure. It is a production location in an industrial site, and there are many cultural relics preserved here, and it has not been modified. In fact, this Dragon Kiln definitely deserves a higher rating, even up to Grade 1.
The grading doesn't really entail legal protection status, but it can somehow define the fate of a heritage building.
If we got a Grade 1 status, the government would be duty-bound to walk the extra mile to see if there's any way to save it. But if it's only Grade 3 and we say, okay, let's take some pictures, do some documentary and let it go.
Paul Chan and his social enterprise regularly run cultural heritage tours in the city. Back in 2016, he helped raise the grading of the Heritage State Theater in North Point from Grade 3 to Grade 1, and eventually saved it from being demolished.
Back in the 1950s, a State Theater, previously Empire Theater, sang as the most important performing venue in Hong Kong, and I would say in Asia, that the founder of this theater, Mr. Harry Odell, who is Jewish, like the first impresario in Hong Kong, is very keen to invite the best performers in Hong Kong. It can house about more than 1,000 audience and provide the best performing venue at that time before the City Hall came into life in the 1960s. We were notified that the proposed grading for this building is Grade 3. It is a huge underestimation of its heritage value.
With a conviction to save this building, Paul and his friends started a public campaign.
We invite historians, sociologists, architects, and movie directors. We start to run those media interviews, which somehow help create the public opinion. We attend the meeting, we wrote commentary, we use every channel to present our arguments and try to reason with the authority. When the situation is not as desirable as we wish, we reason with them till the last minute.
Wendy Ng, an architectural conservationist who grew up in the State Theater, was also involved.
I was born in North Point and I grew up there. And my mom used to run a children's wear shop in the State Theatre arcade. I spent most of my time there in the shop with my mom. So it was a very special place to me in my childhood.
In 2015, when she saw the news about the buyout of the State Theatre, Wendy began to worry about the future of the building, as it means a lot to her.
We were not that optimistic at the very beginning. It's a post-war building, which was not that significant to the eye of the government officials. Obviously, you can see from the list of graded buildings, there wasn't many post-war buildings on the list.
To increase the chances of keeping the theater, Wendy agreed that they should fight for a higher grade.
We tried to take out more history and architectural significance of the building. It's a post-war, standalone theater building, and it's rarely found in Hong Kong nowadays. Architecturally, it is also significant because of the exposed parabolic roof truss, and we can't actually find any other similar structure in other places around the world.
After several months of campaigning, authorities were finally convinced that the State Theatre should be given Grade 1 status.
It should be the only case that the proposed grading will jump from Grade 3 to Grade 1 ever in Hong Kong. So I would say it's rather miraculous to us.
In 2020, the State Theatre was sold to a local developer that subsequently announced a conservation project for the building. Paul believes that part of the campaign cannot be repeated, but the lesson is transferable.
We're quite frustrated by these repeated disappearance of key heritage buildings in Hong Kong. With the right intervention methodology, we can change the fate of the building. It's very important for us to learn the lesson and also apply the know-how in other cases.
Back in Tuen Mun, new construction is happening right next to the Dragon Kiln. Lung Pak Chun still lives here, no longer firing the kiln, but busy supplying clay to other local ceramists.
I really respect Mr. Leung's passion towards protecting this place and also in promoting ceramic work. He spends all his life here and he loves this place so much. It is kind of abandoned, but then he sees the importance of this, not just because of his family. It actually because this kiln represents a phrase of past Hong Kong. This place full of potential to make it work again and to let other people to come and see what this is.
This one is a cultural asset for the Chinese, and we hope that we can retain it. If this is removed, it will be removed permanently, and you will never see this kind of kiln again. I buy the idea of working museum. It's a good idea anyway. Even though it's not active at the moment, I will try my best to do it. Actually, I'm not young, I'm 68. I don't know, everybody will die sometime, and therefore, I don't know whether I can achieve the goal, but I keep going.
That's our show for this week. Join us on Pearl Magazine, same time next week. Bye for now.